We are in Hosea chapter 6, verse 6. And it says there, for I desire what? Okay, so many of the translations say mercy. Do we have any other words? Any different translations? I like the one that Brian, when he read here from the front, Brian Bell, his had a little bit different word besides mercy. Mercy is a good translation, but there's other ways to translate this word. Does anybody have a different one besides mercy? Steadfast love. And here is the word, right? The word is hesed. And if you look it up on Strong's Concordance, for example, if you go to Blue Letter Bible online, and then you can click on the translations, and the word will be spelled out sometimes with a CH. It's not chesed. The CH there is like the German CH, like in Johann Sebastian Bach. It's this like this throat thing. So, chesed is the word for love. Except it's not just love. It's almost untranslatable to English. Sometimes it's translated as loyalty. We see that in 2 Samuel 22:26. If you're looking at the Revised Standard Version, there it's used as loyalty. More often it's translated as steadfast love. You see that in Genesis 39:21, or kindness in Genesis 24:12. So this word hesed is a word that I really like. We cover this in more detail when we were talking about the book of Ruth. So I have a whole sermon series on that. You can go on prmarlon.com and you can, there's the post there, there's the audio from the sermons. And really that story in Ruth, it's all about this love and the way it's played out in that story. So this word here that God says, for I desire, chesed, and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. So this idea of mercy or steadfast love or love, God wants love and not sacrifice. And then by contrast here, this is written in a poetic structure, we have here the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. So think about this. Chesed is paired up with knowledge of God, and sacrifice is paired up with burnt offerings. Does that make sense? So a sacrifice, a burnt offering is an example of a sacrifice. They're two essentially the same thing. Now the word here for love is paired up with knowledge of God. So this whole idea that God is love is not something new that John came up with in the New Testament. It's not something that Jesus invented. It's something that's been known all along. And the prophet Hosea it's mentioning this, and it's interesting that it's translated as mercy as well. And there's a few other things. So if I look at the Baker Encyclopedia of the Bible, Volume 2, page 1357, it says, Chesed is not an emotional response to beauty, merit, or kindness, but a moral attitude dedicated to another's good, whether or not the other is lovable, worthy, or responsive. Oh, that's hard, right? Like, well, I'm sure glad that God loves that way. That's a challenging thing to love, a way to love. That the title of the sermon is To Love is Sufficient. And it may seem deceivingly simple. Oh, okay, it's all we have to do is love. It's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do is love. No, I remember talking with a family member about love. This was after she had posted on social media. She was done with love. I'm not going to mess with this anymore. I've had my heart broken. I'm not, and this was somebody that was, in high school at the time. I'm done with love. I'll never love again. And for those of us who are a little bit older, we kind of get the feeling, right? Loving is dangerous things. It's dangerous ground to be, willing to love. Because the ones that you love are the ones that can hurt you the most. Your enemy says something about you, it's your enemy. You don't expect anything different. Now someone you love says something about you, that means a whole lot more. And when you love someone, if they walk away from you, it causes incredible pain. If you love someone and they are suffering, it causes incredible pain. So it seems natural and logical that to protect myself, I'll just stop loving. Except that's not an option for a Christian. Because as we love, we come to a better understanding, knowledge of who God is, of what He is like. And if we long for Him to come again, can you imagine how much He longs to come again? To be reunited, to be with us, to hold us in His arms and say, it's going to be okay. I'm going to wipe away every tear from your eyes. You see, if we don't love, if we don't experience that tension and that pain and that challenge to love someone that's not worthy of our love, and by the way, nobody is. There are some people who are looking for that one person who will be worthy of their love. You're going to be looking your whole life. Nobody is worthy of your love. I'm not worthy of the love that my parents bestow upon me. I'm not worthy of the love that my sister bestows upon me. I'm not worthy of the love that my wife bestows upon me. I'm not worthy of the love that my children bestow upon me. I'm not worthy of the love that you as a church family demonstrate towards me. I fall short. I make mistakes. I forget to call you sometimes when you're sick. Sometimes you're in the hospital and I wasn't aware of it. And sometimes I have to call and apologize and I'm sorry, please understand. I'm trying, but we're not worthy. So love then must be a decision, knowing ahead of time that you're going to get hurt, that this person doesn't deserve it, but you're choosing to love because God loves you. And you want to just share that with somebody else in the hopes that they will come to know God as they experience your love. And it's hard. It's not easy. But it's what God desires. God desires love, not just towards Him, towards one another as well. Even towards ourselves. Because let me tell you, if I am hard on my kids, which I am, they know that. But it's because I'm even harder on myself. If I'm hard on those who work with me, and sometimes some of the leaders here in our church have been on the receiving end of me just trying to push a little bit further, it's a dumbed down version of how I look at myself and how I push myself for better. Let's make it better. Let's do it better. Let's increase the quality. Let's do the very best that we can. And it can be exhausting. And we can give up and walk away. Say, I'm not going to do ministry. I'm not going to help. I'm not going to stay in this relationship because it's exhausting. It is. But quitting is not really an option. Because you know what happens if we as Christians say, I tried loving, it's painful, I'm going to step back. You know what happens? Then there is more pain and suffering and hate in the world. We are here as salt, mixed with the food, right? You get a pile of salt in one place, that's pretty much useless. The salt has to be mixed in the middle. Remember the prayer of Abraham when God wanted to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. What was his prayer? That God would spare the city. What was the condition for God to spare the city? 50 righteous people. Can we have 50 people there who love? 45, 40, all the way down to 10. And there weren't, and God destroyed that city. I believe that many of our communities, our world still being spared because of Christians spread out like the fragrance of God, loving and caring and being what nobody wants to be nowadays. To be vulnerable, to be present, to be loving. Oh, it's hard. You know, it's interesting. If you have your Bibles with you, please turn with me. We're going to go back a little bit. I hope you highlighted there the passage in Hosea, but let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 7. Deuteronomy chapter 7. chapter 7. Let's look now, starting with verse 7. Well, let's start with verse 6. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples of the face of the earth. The Lord did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any other people, for you were the least of all peoples. But because the Lord loves you, and because he would keep the oath which he swore to your fathers, the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. God chose Israel not because they were a rich, powerful, mighty nation. No, it was a bunch of slaves. He chose them, brought them out of there with a mighty hand. And it's so interesting that God brings the people out to himself. God does something incredible. Let's look at Exodus 19:4. Because this is something that I just realized this week. I never paid attention to this before. Exodus 19:4 says, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to..." God's ultimate goal is to bring us to himself. Now, let's talk about this. You guys are familiar with the Exodus story, right? The children of Israel have been in Egypt. They had been there for about 400 years. They went there because Joseph was there. There was a famine in the land. Remember, and everybody moved there. There's enough grain. They were stayed there until a Pharaoh came along who did not know Joseph. He saw these people. He felt like they were a threat. He said, let's oppress them. Let's make them slaves. They continue to multiply and to grow, and eventually Moses comes, and he says to Pharaoh, God is saying, let my people go, right? We're familiar with that. There is music about that. There is movies. There's cartoons. It's a famous story. Now, let me ask you this. When God shows up in Egypt and he begins to, first he asks nicely, it's very, very clear, God, the God of these people that you're oppressing, wants you to free them. Did God make himself clear? Yes, through Moses. Very, very clear. Pharaoh says, no, who is that God? I don't know that God. So God begins to show himself. And it's interesting, if you do a study on the plagues, each one lines up with a different Egyptian god. So he said, I'm more powerful than this one, I'm more powerful than this one, I'm more powerful than this one. And then God also refers to Israel as his firstborn. And he says, you're holding my firstborn captive. Let him go, or I'll take away your firstborn. Now, by the time God gets to this point, God has revealed his power and might in such a way that there is no doubt in the mind of any Egyptian that this is a real God, more powerful than their gods, and that they should listen to him. There is no reason for doubt. Can we agree on this? It's not because of ignorance. Nobody's going to die because of ignorance. If anybody's going to die, it's because of rebellion. God revealed himself. God gave them directions. They chose not to do it. What were the directions? You sacrifice a lamb. You take the blood. You put it on the doorposts. Now, can that really save you? When God tells you, yes. But if you were just to go in your house and put blood there, it doesn't do anything. It might attract some flies, look weird. The neighbors might call the cops on you. But that by itself, what difference is that going to make? But when they do it, it shows that they trust, they believe, they have faith. What God is doing, he's doing it to save them. He's doing it because of his great grace. They're being saved by grace through faith. As this takes place, they didn't make God come. God decided to come and to save them. So they leave Egypt, and they are before the Red Sea. Mountains to one side, the sea is there. Pharaoh is coming to get him because apparently he hasn't learned his lesson yet. Let me ask you, are the people free? What do you think? Once they have left Egypt, are they free? I'd say that they're free. Is life easy for them? No. But they're free. God is with them. And they saw the power of God. Now, are they scared? Yes. Does that translate to our lives? We experience God's power. We experience a revelation of God. We give ourselves to God. We act in faith. He saves us. We face a challenge. And then we wonder, is God really powerful? Does God really love me? Am I really free? Because if I was free, would I be facing challenges? And these are doubts that Satan will throw your way. You know, it's Valentine's Day is just around the corner. Great opportunity to let down, your loved one, to disappoint them. Because some people have their expectations so high, doesn't matter what you do, they're going to be disappointed. But anyway, there's all this pressure to do loving things. And now buy the teddy bear and the chocolate, and I'll take you out to dinner and this, but why didn't you take me to this place, or why wasn't? There's all this pressure to behave in a certain way. And sometimes the same way that Valentine's Day pressures you to behave in a certain way, we get this idea that if God loved us, He should be behaving in a certain way. Because we don't understand love. We don't understand God. We read God is love, and then I take my idea of God love, and I put it in God's face, instead of letting God reveal to me what love really is like. And we say, if God loved me, I wouldn't have Pharaoh chasing after me. If God loved me, the sea wouldn't be in front of me. If God loved me, life wouldn't be so hard. Think about Jesus. When He got baptized, a voice came from heaven and said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." In other words, I love Him. Right after that, Jesus spends 40 days without having anything to eat. Do you think He felt very loved by God? 40 days? I mean, I spent 1 week camping in Oshkosh, and let me tell you, 1 week in a tent. It's rough. 40 days in the wilderness. Hot sun, cold nights, just discomfort all around. Satan shows up and says, Satan will show up in your life. Say, if God loved you, would you really be going through this? Right? If God was on your side. Let's do a little test. Let me see some proof that God loves you. There's these challenges. But you know what happens? The children of Israel got part of the sea. They came out. They're victorious. God really is with them. And then they run out of food. Where is God? Now let me ask you, as they're going through this, as God is bringing them to Himself, they're learning how to trust in Him. They're learning that He is reliable. They're learning that He is powerful. They're learning about God's character. They're learning that they are loved. But at every step of the way, there is a challenge. Now they need bread. How are we going to survive? And God provides bread. And He provides water. Now, anybody here ever been in the desert in the middle of the day? It's pretty hot. A lot of sun in your face. God provides them with a cloud. Some comfort. He's there with them. At night, it gets pretty cold in the desert. God provides them with fire. And you know what's really interesting? That if you look at the sanctuary that Moses built, according to the pattern that God revealed to him, and you walk into the holy place, to one side you have bread. To the other side you have fire, the lampstand. And in front of you, you have that cloud. It's the incense burning, representing the prayers. You see, God is bringing people to Himself. What they were experiencing in the Exodus is what we see represented in the sanctuary. Is a revelation of God and His love as He brings us to Him. And what's important for us to keep in mind this morning, and if you forget everything else that I say, I want you to remember this. Just because things get hard it's not a sign that you're not free or that God doesn't love you. We grow in our faith in freedom, secure in God's love. We learn how to trust. We learn how He provides. But as we stumble and fall and struggle and get scared, it doesn't mean that we are outside of His love. It doesn't mean that we are no longer free. And I want you to understand that. The children of Israel were growing in their faith. It was a journey, but they were already free. They're just growing and learning more about God as they are on that journey. Now, there is a temptation on this journey as we're learning about God, as we're experiencing bread being provided when we thought we were, going to go without, as we see the cloud providing shade when the day is really hot, or the fire by night when it's really cold and scary. And as we experience these things, there is that temptation as we are in our freedom, because there is an uncertainty, because there is that level of dependence on God, and because God says, I'm a jealous God, you can't have any other gods. There is that stipulation. There is that temptation that we all experience, just like the children of Israel experienced, that what if I just went back to being a slave? Life was easier then. Oh, in Egypt they had cucumbers, right? And onions and these things. Oh, what if I could go back? Do we forget what it was like? But some people think, if only I could go back to the comforts that I had before turning to God. And there are so many that, especially in light of the pandemic and lockdowns and being isolated, that there's that temptation to go back to the old things that held you as a slave, the old addictions, the old things. Why go back to that when God is offering you freedom in His love? That identity as a child of God. It's hard. It's hard when we're growing. There's growing pains. Same thing happens in our faith. But if we know that we are in God's love, if we understand that we are free and that He indeed loves us and provides for us, that should give us the strength to go one more day, one more step, and continue to move as God is bringing us to Himself. We talked about God's love in the Old Testament. God's love does not change. When we look at the history of God's people, we see that through the exile and failure, it persisted with infinite patience, neither condoning evil nor abandoning the evildoers. Something amazing about God's love. It doesn't say it's okay for there to be bad things. It doesn't condone it, but it also does not abandon those who get caught up in those things. You slip and you fall, God's waiting for you, always with open arms. Always. You mess up, you mess up, you mess up. God is there with open arms. Nothing can separate you from that love. The question is, the thing that you have to keep in mind is just don't turn back and go back to Egypt. Don't walk away from the freedom that God has given you. Yes, the freedom comes with challenges, but you all know that. Those of you who are now going to college, you realize that as you leave the house, there's more freedom, but with that freedom comes challenges. Those of you who started your first job, those of you who are perhaps getting married, or those of you who are, at a different stage in your life, you realize there is more freedom, but there's also challenges with that. There are challenges in spiritual growth, but it's so worth it because God does not change. You see, the chief characteristic of God's love, it's kindness, tenderness, compassion, and it's an accepted moral obligation for another's welfare, which no ill desert or want of gratitude will quench. It doesn't matter how undeserving we are, will never quench God's love towards us. My friends, just a couple more verses. This time, let's go to the New Testament and see what they have to say, what these passages have to say about God's love. Let's go to Romans chapter 8. It's interesting, when we come to the New Testament, there is another word that's used for love. New Testament is written in a different language, in Greek. And here we have the word that's used for love that appears by far the most often is agape. Agape is generally assumed to mean moral goodwill, which proceeds from esteem, principle, or duty, rather than attraction or charm. Agape means to love the undeserving, despite disappointment and rejection. If you're single, and you're thinking about getting into a serious relationship, you're contemplating marriage, I want you to think about this. Think about it very carefully now, before you're married. Because once you take that step, you are making a commitment to love this person. And I would highlight, especially when they are unlovable. Now, I'm not saying for you to stay in an abusive situation, because the kind of love that God calls us to love does make us vulnerable to abuse. That's why you have to be very careful before going into a marriage. What's the word I'm looking for? Covenant with someone. This is very serious. Those marriage vows, these are serious things for you to consider. But once you're in it, now you're all in. And I encourage you to go all out. But he doesn't deserve it. She doesn't deserve it. It's true. God calls us to love. Now, I'm not saying this is an excuse for you to remain in an abusive situation. The ideal is that both of you are Christians and you're both, loving each other in a similar way. When you don't deserve it, when there's just like, there is a moral obligation for me to do for you what is best for you. Not what you deserve, what is best for you. And let me go on this just a little bit further. It doesn't mean to give you everything you want. Parents, and those of you who have raised kids, either your own or somebody else's, you know what it's like. Really, really loving someone does not mean giving them everything that they want. And God is that way with us. He doesn't give us what we want, but He gives us what we need. And so it takes a lot of wisdom. Loving is not easy. It's not simple. It's so much easier for me to just give money to the needy and say, I did my part. I gave them money. Yeah. Is that the loving thing to do, or you're just trying to ease your conscience? Because you read Matthew 25, right? Like, well, I guess I'm supposed to, give to the needy, so here's some money. What if God is calling you to actually love the people that are already a part of your sphere of influence? I'm talking co-workers, classmates, family members, people who are struggling. And for you to spend some time in prayer saying, how can I help them? It doesn't have to be money. Money could be a part of it, but maybe they need some guidance, some coaching. Maybe they need to be mentored. Maybe they need someone to just listen to their story, because once you listen to their story, they're more willing to listen to your guidance. It's complex, and I want you to become more comfortable in the discomfort of loving. It's not a quick fix. It's not something that happens overnight. It's this journey through the wilderness. But the good news is that God loves you at each step of this journey. You are free at each step of this journey as you're growing, as you're developing, as you're experiencing discomfort. God's love is there with you. Romans chapter 8, I hope you're there, verse 31. What then shall we say to these things? The challenges of life. If God is for us, who can be against us? We can close it right here, right? This is how the story ends. What do you mean? Well, God is for me. I don't have to be worried about anything else. This is it. But let's explain this a little bit further. Paul goes on, he says, He who did not spare His own Son, but delivered Him up for us all, how shall He not with Him also freely give us all things? The one thing that was in limited supply was Jesus. And God was willing to give Him up for all of us. Would He withhold anything else? Who shall bring a charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. My friends, listen to this. Satan will try to get you to feel unworthy. But actually, that's true. We're not worthy. But here is the lie. The lie is that somehow you have to make yourself worthy. The lie is that you have to, grow your faith on your own and fix your problems on your own, overcome the addiction on your own, and then come to God when God is saying, no, come to me right now just the way that you are. But I don't deserve your love. It's true, you don't, but you need it. So I want you to struggle. I want you to be uncomfortable, but I want you to be uncomfortable in while you're assured of God's love. I don't want you to be questioning your salvation because life is hard. I don't want you to be questioning your salvation because you're struggling with a sin. I want you to struggle with it. I want you to surrender it to God. I want you to experience God giving you a victory over that. But as you're in that struggle, as long as you're not going back to Egypt, you're still free. You're still saved. You're still with God, growing in your faith. The danger, I should say, is when you start to make excuses for your sin, when you start to reason that it's not really that bad, it's not a sin, or that you simply give up on and say, well, it's just the way I'm going to be for the rest of my life. That's dangerous. You're giving up, you're walking away, you're going back to Egypt, you're going back to bondage, to what God delivered you from. Struggling with it, it's okay. This is how we grow. But as you struggle, I want you to be sure of God's love, sure of your freedom in Him, and this is just the growing pains. Let's keep going. So who shall bring a charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is he who condemns? It is Christ who died. Furthermore, is also risen, who is even at the right hand of God, who also makes intercession for us, which means I can go to God in the name of Jesus and ask for forgiveness and know by faith that I am forgiven. Now, don't play games with God. Don't try to trick God, saying you're sorry if you're not really sorry. He knows. But He's also willing. I mean, Jesus died on the cross. There's no reason for anyone to keep any guilt. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? This is to people who are being persecuted for being Christians. Can persecution separate you from God? No. As it is written, for your sake we are killed all day long and are counted as sheep for the slaughter. Fine. But you know what? You can't separate me from the love of God. Verse 37, yet in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. The victory is because of God, because of God's love. So when I love, it's only a reflection of what God has done for me. When I love, is to reveal to somebody else what God is like. I don't love because they deserve it. I don't love because it'll make me saved. I love because God loved me first. And I experience His love daily, and the least that I can do is express it to somebody else. God is asking us to come to know Him better as we become more like Him in how we treat others. We understand God better. We have a better appreciation for God as we go out of our way to love and to help and to be with others. Yet in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Verse 38, for I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. My friends, I close with a quote and then a story. This quote's from the Desire of Ages, page 22. Listen to this. The earth was dark through misapprehension of God, that the gloomy shadows might be lightened, that the world might be brought back to God. Satan's deceptive power was to be broken. This could not be done by force. The exercise of force is contrary to the principles of God's government. He desires only the service of love, and love cannot be commanded. It cannot be won by force or authority. Only by love is love awakened. To know God is to love Him. His character must be manifested in contrast to the character of Satan. This work only one being in all the universe could do. Only He who knew the height and depth of the love of God could make it known. Upon the world's dark night, the sun of righteousness must rise with healing in His wings. Jesus came to reveal the love of the Father. In this dark world, he came as a light. And he was the only one who could do it because he's the only one that understands the love of God. But his love was not this weak love. It's the type that transforms other lives in the way that only love can. To love is enough. But it's also the hardest thing because in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus calls us to love our enemies. Which reminds me of a story of a couple. And they went to talk with their church pastor. And they said, we're done. It doesn't work anymore. We can't, we no longer love each other. And the husband especially was just going on and on about his wife. And all the terrible things. And the pastor said, wow, it sounds like your wife is your greatest enemy. He said, yes, that's how I feel. He opened his Bible to Matthew chapter 5. You're supposed to love your enemies. Here's the thing. I decided to be baptized, to give my life to Jesus when I was 10 years old. I'm going to talk about my story because that's the one that I'm most familiar with. There's a lot of things I didn't know when I was 10. A lot of things I had not been through. I hadn't even been through puberty yet. There's a lot of things that were going to come my way, a lot of challenges. But at 10, I loved God. And I knew that he loved me, and I wanted to give my life to him. And I was baptized. Let me ask you, was I saved at that point? Yeah. I gave my heart to Jesus. Now, as life happened, and there were struggles and challenges and difficulties, and I'm growing in Jesus, and now I know more about Jesus. I've overcome some challenges. I have a better understanding of who God is. Am I now more saved than I was when I was 10? No. And then, I went to college. I went to a good Adventist university. Hannah knows what I'm talking about. And then I got a degree in theology. Oh, I learned so much about God. I was studying and reading, and I started preaching and teaching, and I started to grow even more. Am I now more saved than I was when I was 10? And then by God's grace, I got a chance to work with a church as a youth pastor, gave Bible studies, had my first baptism, got involved with youth ministry, and we went camping, and I had people coming over to talk at like 3 in the morning. I'm like, don't you guys sleep? And we're talking about whatever challenge they're going through as, a early, college student and things, and just life is hard. And doing all this ministry, I went back to graduate school at Andrews University. A great experience. I learned so much about God. Got my master's degree. Am I more saved now than when I was 10? So I want you to understand this. God desires for us to grow. There are things that we are called to do, like loving our enemies. But in the struggle, as we're going through all this, as we're experiencing growing pains and challenges with our faith and all of these things, let me tell you, if you are not heading back to Egypt and giving up on God, you are saved. Once you give your life to Him, once you're baptized and you make that decision, God is with you. And yes, it's hard. And Jesus was in the wilderness and Satan was saying, are you really the Son of God? And you struggle, and Satan comes to you. Are you really saved? Does God really love you? How could He love you? You are so unlovable. And you say, it's true, I am unlovable, but God does love me because there is nothing that can separate me from Him. And as long as I refuse to give up, it doesn't matter the pain, the challenges, whatever comes, I am secure in God's love. I'm secure in that freedom. And I may be going through the wilderness, but God will provide the manna. God will provide the water. God will provide all that I need as He's bringing me to Himself. And I experience these things in freedom, in His love. There is never a question of my salvation because God wants me to grow. But I grow in His love. I grow in the freedom that He gives me. And now that love motivates me to go above and beyond, even and especially with people who don't deserve it. Because that's how I come to understand God better. That knowledge of God, what God desires of me, is love. A love that doesn't make any sense in this world. A love that reveals God. Amen.